Hi, everybody. For those of you who haven't heard yet, I finally got myself back in the Philippines. And if you look at my other video, really prolific guy here, you'll see that I pretty much went back to the same landlord. Different apartment, but not enough to really make a whole lot of difference. It's inexpensive, it's got a nice location, it's somebody I'm used to dealing with, and basically, when I landed this time around, I was in such miserable shape, I needed someplace where I could get horizontal, like right now, for an extended period. I'm going to go into that a little bit deeper. Years ago, a buddy of mine described the sudden minor epidemic of respiratory infections among college students returning from spring break as shipping fever. And I thought about it a bit. I had grown up working for farmers in the neighborhood, and I was familiar with that concept. And this was back in the days when there was still some possibility of a guy making a living on a family scale dairy farm. But these small farms didn't buy and sell stock in massive quantities. So when they bought a cow or sold a cow, it was hauled by delivery people who were also picking up and dropping livestock at other farms along the way. And when you took these animals from different locations that were all perfectly healthy, I mean, none of them would intentionally ship a sick animal because they know just what kind of liability they'd have. But all these healthy animals would be crammed into a cattle carrier semi-trailer and stressed, which is pretty accurate description of what happens when you take a cow that's used to the earth staying in one place and bounce it on down the highway, moving it to a new home. And they would swap viruses, stuff that none of them had any problem with, but if you got enough of them together, at least one of the viruses you'd be exposed to would be something you'd have a reaction to. So by the time they arrived, you could pretty much count on a week or so of some sort of mild respiratory infection, and that generally picked up the name of shipping fever. Nobody bothered to try to find a cure for it or a vaccine because really, there are so many different viruses were involved, a vaccine was just impossible. Well, like I said, the family farm is long gone, and livestock aren't subjected to this anymore. So, us human beings had to fill the gap. When you throw several hundred people on an airliner, you're basically combining them in a metal tube where they're all breathing each other's exhales, and you're stressing them, especially on the long haul flights. The longest leg of my return was 12 hours, and that is stressful. I mean, simply lack of sleep is physically stressful. And I managed to pick up the human equivalent of shipping fever. So I've got a little sinus trouble and a headache and minor upper respiratory infection. That'll go away. That's not a big deal. I also got on the plane with a minor foot injury that I believe resulted in a small blood clot forming. And by the time I got off the plane in Korea and located my gate for the transfer, my foot was hurting. By the time I got here to the Philippines, I was not completely immobilized, but down to the point where I had to, I really had to justify moving around. I had a limited amount of mobility and I had to prioritize how I spent it. So, like I said, I wound up here at my old landlord's place simply because I did not have the mobility to look for something better, something cheaper, something more interesting. And I've been here a week now, and honestly, I can't say I got a bad deal. We both know what we're dealing with. I know that if I have a complaint, he handles it in a hurry. He knows that when the rent is due, he's going to get it on time. And that is like, the absolute basic good landlord, good tenant deal. Other health issues. When you travel, no matter how far you roam, no matter how solo you are, you're never really alone. Each of us, and this is a point where the squeamish might want to do something else, each of us carries our own internal menagerie. And it's microscopic. You get your first few creatures in your internal bioload from your mother's breast milk, and it works up from there. You come home, you deal with your brothers and sisters, you get passed around to all the relatives. Yeah, I mean, they don't have to be totally unhygienic slobs. They're going to transfer some bacteria to you. And this is normal. I mean, everybody's got their biota that they carry with them. And it not only changes from place to place because of what's endemic to the region, it even changes from person to person. To the extent that if somebody did a complete biomap of your digestive system, including quantity as well as the different variety, it would probably be almost as distinctive as a fingerprint. Not a problem. You go about your day, you go about your business, you don't notice. That's okay. Then you move to a distant region, and the endemic bacteria are different. And if you're there on vacation and you're very careful about cooking and hygiene and what you eat and where you eat, and you get lucky, you can go a couple, 3 weeks and not have any problems and get back to your happy home and then start stocking up on Imodium there. 3 weeks is about the limit, and you're generally better off, if you know you're going to be there longer, doing something to trigger it early. Have a salad in a restaurant that isn't quite up to par. Something that will expose you to the local biosphere. And this happened to me the first time I was in the Philippines, and it was not a big deal. Stay near a commode for a couple of days and basically go about your business. I have not had that problem on my return yet, so I may have brought some bacteria back with me, have my own starter culture. But yeah, it's something to keep in mind if you're moving to a different location. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter how. We used to make jokes about going down to Mexico and getting a case of Montezuma's Revenge, or heading to some third world beach and coming down with traveler's trots. But there were just as many Mexicans coming north and catching a case of La Turistas. So it's not a matter of one region being worse than another, it's simply luck of the draw. More later.